1.5 million cold emails. That's how much this episode's guest is sending every single month across his 200 agency clients. Nick Abraham runs a cold outbound agency as well as a few B2B software companies. And in this video, he's going to walk us through what's working for cold email in 2025, how he's thinking about deliverability so his emails can land in the primary inbox more often, and how he's approaching his tech stack when often it can feel you need a PhD even to understand how to do cold email in today's market. So let's jump into the episode. All right, sweet. Okay, let's talk some cold email. So,
Let's do it.
Nick, I think a good place to start is why why should people listen to you, right? Like, we're going to talk through cold email. I of course know what you're doing in that space, but for those who might not have heard of you, like what are you doing currently related to cold email?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in this space for quite some time. I feel like even though I'm young, people consider me like an uncle in this space. But I mean, like quick background on me, like 200 plus active clients at our lead gen agency. We send well over, I think, 1.5 million cold emails a month right now. We're grabbing over 10 million contacts a month across all our companies when it comes to lead scraping. Currently in my Smart Lead account, I have over 90,000 inboxes that we're cold emailing from. So yeah, just been in the space. I mean, we've built a lot of tech in this space as well. So like we run like, a couple SaaS companies like Scrubby, which was like the first catch-all validator in the entire market. I've even tried to build my own email platform way back in the day, even before Instantly and Smart Lead came out. Funny enough, we had a lot of the features that they had, but that was a total failure. It was like my first SaaS I ever created, which was super hard. Uh, but yeah, it's been in the space forever, been working on cold email stuff forever. A lot of the strategies you see people do and implement, they've come from my content from way back in the day. So yeah, just been around the block when it comes to cold email.
For sure. Yeah, yeah. And you like I think I saw on your social recently, and this is going to be bad if it wasn't you, but I think I saw you got rewards from, I don't know if it's Smart Lead or who else. Like you actually get results, right? Like
Oh
it's
yeah,
good
yeah.
coding now.
It's funny. I'm not a good marketer by any means, and we just started building out like our nurture newsletter flows and stuff like that. And in one of the emails, it's a message from V, and he told us in this last year we were the second most replied to account in all of his Smart Lead users, and they have like well over 90,000 users. They're sending, and I actually just spoke to V today morning. He has over 10.5 million inboxes inside of Smart Lead, and so yeah, we're the second most replied to account, and probably arguably one of the biggest email platforms in the world right now.
Yeah, crazy. That's crazy stuff. Okay. All right. Well, I think yeah, with all that information, people are definitely going to listen to you when it comes to cold email. So obviously you're still getting results for your clients. It's still working well. What what is the current state of cold email in 2025? Like what's working?
Yeah, and then like everyone thinks like, and you'll see this every year. There'll be a period where cold email is definitely harder. Like the spam filters kind of do catch up, and people just consider the channel dead. It definitely takes a little bit more work than it used to. It definitely costs a little bit more than it used to, but it's still the channel that you're going to get the lowest CAC easily. And the number one thing that correlates to the result of your campaign is just the offer and product market fit. If you don't have those two things, like it doesn't even matter if it's cold email or if you're running ads, like you're just going to have a lot or a much harder time to get results. Your CAC's going to get higher. It's going to require you to send more emails to get a lead, things of that sort. So I think like whenever people say that this channel is dead or it's harder, it's really more a reflection that like they're just operating a much harder offer and they just don't have like a cold ready offer that's like piercing through the market when it comes to actually running the campaigns.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of like projecting as well, particularly
Mhm.
on like LinkedIn. I know some people give your posts a hard time. But I don't know. I think uh, people are just, I don't know, their natural reaction to anything sales is just to doubt it. But like, I mean, the numbers speak for themselves, right?
Mhm.
Um, do you, because you've worked with so many clients, I know you you coach like hundreds of agency owners as well. Are there certain businesses where you've just noticed that like it's just really hard to get
Yeah.
cold email to work? And I guess in contrast, are there businesses where it tends to work better?
Yeah. So I think like the way I always think about it is like, okay, is your offer more of a demand gen offer or more of a demand capture offer? And if you have more of a demand gen offer, you're pretty much in a good spot because you can run the most basic campaign to a raw list and you'll get good results. But when you run a demand capture offer, something that just requires to find the right person that's searching for your solution in that market, like you kind of have to get creative with how you run the campaign. And that's where you have to implement a lot of the play strategies and things of that sort to actually get results. And so that's like the thing I think about. But like just off of general themes I've seen, most people that are targeting any kind of IT leader, for the most part, they just hate any kind of outbound sales. They will most likely not respond to you. Doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means that you have to come at it a little bit differently. But your chance
Yeah.
of getting success by just being super straightforward, like you would with most other industries and most other target markets, is probably not going to work. And so, yeah, I think like that's kind of how I think about like what kind of clients are going to see success or not. And I think like if you have a demand capture offer, you just really need to think holistically about, okay, how can I make this more of a demand gen offer? And how can I like really translate that? And I think if you can kind of get into that mindset, and it requires a lot of testing, a lot of like validating, running a ton of different campaigns in different industries, pitching different solutions and everything of that sort. But once you figure that out, it's going to make it easier for your cold email campaigns to work, but it's also going to make all your marketing efforts work way better as well.
Yeah. So like, just for those who might not have heard of those terms before, so by demand capture, essentially what you're saying is like someone has to be proactively looking for that thing. Like, so for cybersecurity, it's 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 not like a sexy topic for a lot of people. Like usually
Mm-hmm.
people look at cybersecurity when something's gone wrong, or
Exactly.
they're trying to move up market and they need a certain certification, otherwise enterprise clients won't work with them. That's when they go to market and look for cybersecurity solutions. It's really hard to try convince somebody that that's worth doing in the first place, and so that's what you mean by demand capture, right?
Yeah, exactly. And another one. It's like websites, for example, right? Like if you hit an entire list of people, there's only 3% of the market that's really looking for your solution. And in this example, it would be websites, right? So it's like, it's really hard to convert the other 97% to think that they need your solution. And so you kind of have to think about like, okay, how can I make what I sell, which is like websites, like attractive to the other 97%? And
Yeah.
in most cases, it's like, okay, let's make a specific solution and make a specific claim to a specific industry and solve a specific pain point. And that's really hard to identify and do until you do a lot of testing in a ton of different industries, pitching a ton of different things and running like some heavy split tests. But
Yeah.
that's how you come to go from demand capture to demand gen.
Yeah. Like basically how I describe what you're saying there is you need to create a code friendly offer, right?
Yeah.
Where it again, it's really hard to convince someone they need a new website. But if you offered to audit their current website, or if you offered to do a split test against their current one versus the new one, like some offer that's irresistible and aligns with their desires, you're going to have a far better chance of like people saying yes. And then once you've got that yes, then you can maybe upsell them to a retainer service or something like that. I think that's a really hard because it might not seem like to you, but I think these are actually quite advanced like
Oh.
sales and marketing tactics. And I
Mhm.
think it's really hard for people to cross that bridge of, oh, I can't just send emails to people asking them to have a meeting with me. Like I have to
Mhm.
actually like structure an entire offer that is suitable for cold outbound. Like some people just really struggle with that. And I think a lot of people,
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's just, it, it, it's, it's just you need to understand the concepts of like warm traffic, cold traffic, what even is an offer. Like, oh, I can't just people aren't just going to buy my product or buy my service. They actually want to get something out of it. Like it's quite
Mhm.
an advanced conversation for some.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think like I always tell a lot of our clients, people that are in our sales pipeline and everything of that sort, I'm like, if you have no budget to test and you're kind of like, on the risk of, maybe going under, or you're in any kind of like, kind of like in that scarcity mindset, like do the campaigns yourself, do the testing yourself, try to see if you can validate it a little bit before you even hire me or any other agency owner in the space. like try to validate that it can work a little bit on your own, because all the other agency owners are going to do is just amplify your efforts, right?
Yeah.
But if you have no budget, it's going to be, 60, 90 days before we figure out if we can get a campaign working, if at all. And I think that's like the misconception a lot of people have, is like they think that an agency owner can sell a bad product or sell a bad offer, and they can't.
Yeah. And that's where things go wrong. Like I experienced this as an agency, and I've also been on the other side. When I speak with founders all the time, I say you don't hire an agency until I say doing tens of thousands a month, like maybe 20,
Yeah.
30K a month, because then you actually have something people want. You probably have some idea of who you're targeting, what message those people care about, and you've got some sort of process, and then an agency can just like take that and run with it. But if you're
Hmm.
expecting an agency to come into your business and figure those things out for you from the ground up, like you, it's going to be an expensive mistake. That you're
Yeah.
going to work with them for 90 days. You're going to
Hmm.
pay 2, 3K a month, and you're going to churn afterwards, and it's just going to leave a sour
Yeah.
taste in everyone's mouth. I've seen it so
Yeah.
many times.
So many times. And I think like if you have the expectation of like, okay, I'm going to give them 3 months to figure it out and test and learn, and I'm okay with burning capital for 3 months, but I know that, hey, like I'm investing in the long term, then it can work out. But yeah, I think like a lot of customers come in and they're like, hey, like it's, 3 days into this campaign, I haven't seen anything yet. What's up? It's like, dude,
Mm-mm-mm.
come on
Yeah,
now.
yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah, I think that's how I think about cold email campaigns in general, though.
Cool. So what are you seeing from like an infrastructure perspective? Because I'll be honest, I've been out of the cold email game for a little while now. I've been mainly focused on inbound. It does get to the point where like things just seem so complex, and I don't know if that's because people are overcomplicating it or that's just the current state of cold email. Like, what are you seeing from your side? Like, what's the best way to ensure that people are actually landing in the primary inbox?
Yeah, and I think it's kind of a mix of both of those things, right? Like, it's like the so you have all these cool email content creators like myself. We're gonna make it seem a lot more complex because that does help us on the inbound side, right? But it also is true to a certain aspect. Like, we're sending millions of emails. If you're an individual contributor and you're only sending, let's say, 10,000 emails, it's not as complex. And you don't really need to run all the heavy automations and infra stuff that we do. Like, you could get results with just using Instantly, using Smartly. They both have the ability to buy and set up inboxes through Google and Microsoft. And you just do that. And that's all you really need. You get Apollo leads, which is easy and cheap. Use Million Verifier, validate. You get your infrastructure set up through Smartly and Instantly, and use their sequencers. And you just write copy with under 100 words, casual, conversational, short, sweet, direct to the point, and you have a cold ready offer. Like, you can make a campaign work easily, but it starts to get a little bit more difficult once you start to scale the volume, and that's where you have to figure out how to get all these like different backup systems in place, figure out these different ways to enrich the list and all these crazy things. But like sometimes people jump way too ahead. Like they try to figure out all those different things before they even have the fundamentals in place. And I cold email for sure has gotten a lot more complex, but at the end of the day, like you have to have those fundamentals in place. Otherwise, all the fancy gimmicks that you see everyone talk about just don't work. And it
Yeah,
just
for
falls
sure.
short. So yeah, I think like fundamentals over everything. And just like when you're running your first cold email campaign, just get a minimal viable campaign up. And it's just using that tech stack that I mentioned earlier, and you will get results. And then from there, you'll figure out like what I need to do to scale it.
Yeah. Do you have like certain metrics you're looking to achieve? Like, do you have like a baseline where right, yeah, we've found a winning angle here, or no, we actually need to change something?
Yeah, great question. So, it's funny because like you'll see on Smartly, or not Smartly, but you'll see on like LinkedIn and stuff, people will post like these crazy screenshots where the reply rate is like 10% plus, and the positive reply rate is maybe like 60%. And I talk about this all the time because I'm like, if they don't ever explain what the offer is and who they're selling to, and what the copy says, like that
Yeah.
stuff is so easy to gimmick. Like if I wrote in a cold email campaign, hey, I will generate leads for you for completely free, no upfront fee. You could pay me after I close, or after you close a deal. Let me know if you're interested. Like, my reply rate is going to be 10%, and my positive reply rate is going to be 60%, right? And so I think that's where a lot of people mess things up. But I think like for an average campaign, you should always look for above a 1% reply rate. If it's below 1%, there's usually some level of deliverability issues that you have to kind of solve for. But you want to optimally get into like I would say 2 to 4% reply rate. That's a good place to be. That means you're inboxing well, you're actually getting conversations going. And then depending on the offer, the positive reply rate is going to vary. I would say anything in that 20 to 40% positive reply rate is a solid space to be. My ideal place to get to is like one lead per every 350 to 500 contacts. So that means like for every 350 to 500 people that you're reaching out to, you're getting someone saying, this sounds really interesting. I'd love to set up a call.
Yeah, yeah. And have you seen, because um, when I was doing like outbound for my agency and other businesses, like you could different calls to actions and offers would like fluctuate the reply rate. Like for
Uh-huh.
example, if you offered someone like a lead magnet and it's very low friction, it's just like say yes if you want to receive it, you get a higher reply rate, but trying to convert those to meetings booked would be tough. Whereas given that hard call to action of asking for the meeting up front, you'd get a lower reply rate, um, but more of those would convert to meetings. But do you have any preference with regards to that?
Yeah. So I think when you're working with an agency and they're so like yeah, you got to kind of think about it like the full funnel. I think like okay, if you're working with an agency and they're billing you for every positive response, and they're pushing you to do a loom strategy or a lead magnet strategy, it's not in your benefit because like you said, it's you're going to get a ton of positive replies, but it's extremely hard to take those lead magnet positive replies to a booked meeting. You know, I think if you're paying for book meetings, then it's completely different, right? So like if they want to do the lead magnet, it's kind of making their life a little harder, which is fine. I prefer to try to always start my first campaign with just like a simple direct response CTA. That isn't too hard and it's a little bit more conversational. So my favorite ones is like, is that something you'd be interested in? Simply, just like that, right? And you get people saying, yeah, I'd love to see more info, or yes, that sounds great. Like, let's have a call. Things of that sort. I love that CTA. That's like been my highest performing CTA. And I think it's kind of a little bit overused nowadays, but it's still doing pretty well in a lot of markets. But you also just kind of have to think about it, right? Like if you're in a very competitive space, let's say you're selling website design or websites to local businesses, they're getting probably 5 to 10 of those emails a day. If you put your CTA as is this something you'd be interested in, like getting a new website? Your reply rate's going to be pretty low versus like if your CTA was like, hey, I'd love to send you a free mock-up of your site. And,
Yeah.
you kind of have to just do the full math of like, okay, if I get a ton of responses and I get a ton of conversations going, do those eventually turn into sales versus like if I get no replies, but maybe get that one per every 1,500 contacts that responds with interest because I'm kind of like, shooting in the dark, finding that one person that's looking for it in that market. Does that actually work for me? So it's kind of like just looking at the full stack of like, okay, what's leading to appointments and then what's actually leading and converting into sales. And so that's kind of how I think about it. But yeah, you kind of like the first thing obviously to solve is just getting replies and then getting appointments and then getting sales. But then like you want to start testing and seeing like, okay, what can I do that requires the least amount of work to be able to actually get that sale?
Yeah, yeah. So, are you mostly using the standard like Apollo and the various tools that work around that for your leads, or are you also using things like signals and intent signals and stuff like that, right? Which is probably the hottest topic in like sales tech at the
Yeah.
moment. Again, I think it's something that people can overcomplicate a bit, but I'm interested to hear if you've seen value in using
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. I think there's certain signals that are better than others. I don't like signals that come at such low frequency, unless it's so. Like, let me give you an example, right? Like some people will use like the site visitor as a good measure of a signal, and like yeah, sure, absolutely, it's a good signal for sure. But if you get like no traffic at all, and you're using that as your entire GTM strategy, and you get like maybe 6 enrichments from our B2B, like you can have the best, most personalized cold email in the world, but you're still only going to book 1 to 3 meetings a month, right?
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so, like, I prefer like, and here's the other thing too. It's like if you have a demand gen offer, you really don't need signals. Like, you should just be running volume and running like pretty raw, just like Apollo lead list with a direct response offer and just kind of go at it, because you will just generate more results with volume. But I think when you're running any kind of demand capture offers, signals definitely help, for sure. And so I
Yeah.
I think it just also comes down to like the type of signal. Like my favorite signal right now is like uh, someone that's following a company page on LinkedIn. So there's a lot of new guys that will, and we actually originated this, funny enough, the LinkedIn company follower scrape.
Oh
That
yeah,
one
I've
is,
I've I've, I've tried that.
yeah, that one is such a good angle. People are kind of rinsing it now, but like in certain industries, like they're really really good. I remember we did this. We scraped all our biggest agency, and this is like when we first started. We scraped all the biggest lead gen agencies' followers, and we would run cold emails to them. And we were signing clients like left and right, like within 7 days. Like this was like the shortest sales cycle we've ever seen at our agency. And this is like when we first did it, maybe 2 years ago. The other the other signal right now that I really like. So it's actually new. One of my good friends, he's kind of like a mentor to me. He's actually the one who taught me how to do the company follower scrape. He has this new signal that he's built, which basically it will monitor your competitors' sales reps. And so if you're selling like a high ticket B2B service, right? He will be able to send you a list of all like your competitors' connections that they're making on LinkedIn, right? And if you look at like even with our sales reps, like our part of our process with our account executives is like once you have that first call, go connect with them on LinkedIn, right? So you could see everyone who's pretty much actively in their ICP as well as in their pipeline, and you can engage them. And I think that signal right there is something that not many people are using right now, and it is kind of like a lightning in a bottle thing. You sometimes won't get as much like activity. It's once again like one of those like low signal things. Like let's say you operate in a very niche industry and there's not that many competitors. Like you may only get like 10 to 15 people that are in their pipelines or whatnot, and that fit your ICP. But if you're in a pretty big industry with a ton of way bigger competitors, like it's a really good one. And so that's
Mm,
one of our favorite signals that not many people are talking about, but it is pretty nuts.
yeah, yeah, that's interesting. I think, I mean, interested to hear your thoughts on this. I think for say high ticket software, I think signals could be more important just
Mhm.
because like nobody wakes up on the day and says I want to spend 50K on software. They move in market, maybe there's some kind of trigger event, they're searching on Google, they're jumping on calls, they're visiting websites, maybe there's a big initiative and they're hiring people that need to support that initiative. I think in that case those signals can be used to suggest that, oh, okay, this person has moved in market, maybe now's like a good time to reach out to them. I think, and that's where I see most of the hype, to be honest, is a lot of these like mid-market enterprise software companies that are
Mhm.
just historically used such like legacy data that now with all of these new tools and just how like outbound has just been disrupted, I think they're going crazy over like all of this data.
Yeah. And I think like what a lot of people mess up with is on the signal specifically, like they just try to run it through a smart leader instantly Clay campaign. So like, they'll have like some kind of monitoring kind of function inside of Clay. It'll, send the data into a smart lead campaign and then just kind of have that run in autopilot. I feel like for most signals, that's like the level one way of doing it. And I think the better way to do it is actually identify these signals and then assign it to a rep, an SDR, or an AE if you're doing full cycle sales,
Mhm.
and have them actually work and engage the lead manually. Because those signal leads, they have a lot more intent. So like for example, and the way I came to this conclusion was like with Eric, like his thing is called Cam. It's kind of cool because it's like camera, you can monitor people. But basically, we would take his signals and we would just throw them into a cold email campaign, and like we didn't get any results at all. And I was like, dude, this signal, like, it's not that good, to be completely honest. And then we did the opposite, where we're signing it to our AEs and we're having them go in and do full cycle sales and engage with the people. And then we started seeing sales come through the door, and I think that's another thing a lot of people mess up with on the signal side. And you can kind of see this in the market as well, because like our B2B, for example, they are now making it to where it integrates the CRM, and then it like assigns and pushes to like an SDR, and assigns to the SDR to work a workflow and do all that stuff. And I think that's how most signals for the most part should be leveraged, unless it's like a high activity signal. Like let's say you're monitoring a keyword on Reddit, and that keyword is mentioned hundreds of times a day. You could score the leads and put the most priority accounts to be assigned to an SDR or an AE to work manually. And then you could take like the low quality leads or the ones that's got scored lower to just be put into an instantly and smart lead campaign. And I think that's the better solution. But yeah, I think like most people, they just go from signal just to a smart lead instantly campaign and hope for the best.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, I come from the background of like never worked really at a mid-market or enterprise company, and so when tools like Instantly and Smart Lead came around, I could just rip them, and I'd be pretty, I'd be good. But I have realized, there's a guy I've spoken to a few times called Scott. I can't remember his surname, but he runs like a sales slash outbound consultancy, and he works with mid-market enterprise companies, and it's a completely different beast. Like
Different. Yeah.
they're not just going, hey, this person visited your website, let's send them like a cold email straight away. It's more ABM focused. There's a lot of stuff, there's a lot of like RevOps work going on, enriching their CRM. Some of these deals are worth tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, you're not just gonna just instantly do like automated outbound. You're going to be a bit more smart and strategic around it. So I think it's just like a completely different game to say SMB, where you might be like a small agency or even like a small software startup where it's probably just you and maybe a couple of others.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think like a good example of this is like Ramp, for example. They send, well over 1 million cold emails a month. And they're pretty heavy on it, and they run some great campaigns too. But they also do have, I believe, like a team dedicated to like breaking into like really, high value accounts in the enterprise market. And so they kind of run both simultaneously, which I think is also a good idea for a lot of these like enterprise type companies. If they do have an offering for kind of that SMB, maybe mid market, running both in tangent.
Yeah. What I find so funny is, there's a bit of outrage with like the automated outbound scene. But literally companies like Ramp, and I think they're pronounced Gorgeous or Georgious. It's like
Mhm.
the ecom CX platform. Those guys have been ripping like programmatic outbound for a minute, like custom. Where before tools like Instantly, I think even before like Clay was popular, they've been running these programs just sort of under the hood. I mean, they've got some blog posts out on the internet, but it's so funny. Like, these guys have been this playbook has been around for a minute. It's only in the last couple of years has it been democratized, the buzzword, because of tools like Smart Lead and Clay and Instantly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think like what Clay has done for the space is amazing. Like they've built like a phenomenal product, and dude, if I had to put my money on it, I think in the next 10 years they're going to be bigger than anybody else in the space. Like they're going to build a sequencer on top of the data. They're gonna build the entire full end to end function. Like I bet you they build a CRM into their product eventually, so that you could just run everything from Clay. And they're set up to do so like perfectly. They've raised a ton of capital, so they'll be able to do the product development at another level. And they bought themselves even with the massive overhead, like years of runway. And so yeah, I think like they're geared up to really own this space in the next like 5 to 10 years, which is awesome to see.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you raise that type of money, you need to go big. Like,
Yeah.
everyone's expecting their return. On the topic of Clay, do you use Clay much at the agency? Like, is it a product you personally get value from, or again, is
Yeah.
it okay? So, what
Yeah.
sort of like use cases are you using it for?
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story. So this is like where like I constantly reinvent things when I shouldn't, and so we built like our own internal version of Clay, and it was doing a lot of the stuff that Clay Agent does and things of that sort. And that thing was breaking like almost like once a week. And so we're running all these like crazy cool plays, but we just can't do it enough scale and volume for our clients because like what we were building internally just kept breaking all the time. And so I was like, dude, fuck this. Like we are getting onto Clay and we're using Clay at a high level. And so yeah, we started really get on Clay in like the last 2 months. Phenomenal product all the way. Like I mentioned, the things I like doing. I mean, there's so many playbooks you can run. So one of my favorites that, and I'll talk about the generic ones that anybody can run regardless of their offer. And those are the ones that we usually run for our clients. The goal here is like you don't want to use Clay to create the entire email. You want it to be able to either filter your lead list, so you can just reach out to like perfectly accurate accounts to whatever you're selling, or you use it to basically identify a singular variable that you're able to include in the email that helps it seem more personalized. Those are the best two use cases. I see a lot of people that have, or they use Clay to create like entirely unique emails all the way through. It's like doing a lot of AI analysis and input and things of that sort. And the emails are just junk. Like they just straight up are, right? Like it may look really personalized, but it just doesn't sound human at all. And like it's really hard to QA that stuff at scale whenever you let AI just spin out a ton of stuff. And like I bet you if you look in your inbox and you had to make a guess of like which email in here was written with a ton of AI, you'd be able to find it pretty quickly.
Oh yeah,
Um,
it's just like yeah, the personalization is, I wouldn't call it creepy because I don't get creeped out by cold
yeah,
emails, but you're like, yeah, like a normal person wouldn't say that because like the
yeah.
level of detail they've gone into, and they're overly enthusiastic, and there's like a bunch of red flags where
Mhm.
they've kind of gone like too far into the AI
Yeah.
personalization.
So I'll tell you the favorite ones I like to run that you can run on like any offer, and it's not too much. So one easy one is finding someone's colleague in the same department. So like if you have a co-founder or just someone that works under you, like grabbing their name and putting into the cold email campaign. So you could say, hey, I wasn't sure if I should reach out to you or Liam. Like that works so good, and you can put that on any offer. Other ones that I like is like finding what the the company on the lead list, their ICP. So let's say you're working with, or you're targeting like, or like let's say your lead list is e-commerce brands. It'll find who they sell what product to and who to. So it'll say like, it'll identify, they sell purses to old ladies for whatever reason, right? Then you can kind of like put that into your cold email campaign. It was like, hey, I noticed that you guys are in the market to sell purses to old ladies. And then, those are like some of our favorite ones. So I call that one like the identify ICP. The other ones is like finding competitors. That one's also really good. So like for every lead on your lead list, you're identifying like competitors. So like, if let's say Ramp was on your lead list, you'll find CapChase and I don't know who else is in their space, but just like, be able to mention them in the cold email. And yeah, there's just like tons of different like things you could do like that. And sometimes you could just get really creative with like how you could structure and put together the data of the campaign. So like funny enough, like I was talking to Eric and his product, right? It does like the
I didn't
sales
even know
rep.
he had a product, by the way. I didn't.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So this is Eric Nowalski, or this is Eric Paulson, not Nowalski. You're probably thinking about the
Oh, okay,
yeah,
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 okay.
different guy. But shout out Eric. Shout out both Erics. They're both cool. But so yeah, like I mentioned, right? His product can monitor sales reps. So the cold email campaign I told him to build in Clay is like, hey, first name, um, if I could help you monitor some of your competitors' sales reps, like competitor 1, 2, and 3, would that be of interest? And then in your follow-up email, you could say like, you could pull in the actual sales, like salespeople on those companies and be like, hey, first name, uh, here's some recent connections that competitor or sales rep 1, 2, and 3 have, and it's like that would be a banger campaign because it's like if I got that cold email and I'm like, oh, here's recent connections that Science's sales rep had, like I'm like, dude, I got to reply to this. Like this is gold because this is a lead right here.
Yeah,
So yeah, I
sick.
think like you could use Clay to really get creative and create some like super nifty campaigns like that. But I would say for the average person's, stick to the basics. Just grab colleagues, grab competitors, grab ICPs, and figure out how to bake it into your campaign.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's worth understanding like what game you're personally playing. Like again, I look at people who are sort of targeting mid-market enterprise, and they're using everything, every tool. I think there's a tool called, like, I think it's Octave, which I think helps you build ICPs and personalize messages to them and different market segments. I've come across different AI writers all the time, and I think these
Yeah,
tools can be like really useful. I think particularly if you have a large sales org, and where everyone on your team probably isn't like super passionate about cold email, or isn't willing to invest hours in watching YouTube content about cold email or learning play. I think these tools can help like replicate winning playbooks internally. But I think if you're just getting started, or if you target sort of the bottom end of the market, which most people do, right? I think you don't need to overcomplicate. I think your effort is much better spent on like the foundations, like product market fit. Do you actually know who you're targeting? Do you actually know what they care about?
Yeah.
Do you actually have like an attractive offer? I think those things are far more like higher leverage.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think like a lot of the AI writers out there too, they do really well on very simple offers, right? Like they can write good cold emails, they can explain it, they can figure out pain points and stuff like that. But it's just not there yet when it's like a kind of complex offer that has a couple, different steps to it. And maybe new into the world as well. And so I think that's where a lot of people mess up in the cold email space because like a lot of these agency owners, like they'll just put their offer into whatever the AI writer is, and it's like, oh, dude, this thing pitches B2B lead gen really good, just as good as me. But then you start to put your customers' offers in there, and you're like, oh, this is not good, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's why a lot of the AI writers get a lot more hype than they should. I haven't found any that I'm like, dude, this is way better than a human.
Interesting. Maybe they're built for certain, like maybe they work really well for like Martech and sales tech, where you're basically selling some kind of pipeline outcome or
Hmm.
revenue outcome, or it's a very common language. But maybe if you go to other verticals, it's a bit tougher to sell.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
At the uh, a while back, you mentioned about just for the sending infrastructure, just using like whatever instantly a smart lead offer outside the box. At what stage do you start looking elsewhere? Because there's so many
Yeah.
products that have popped up where it's like private infrastructure, all these different inboxes from different vendors. Like there's a lot
Mhm.
going on there. At what stage do you start to like explore that?
Yeah, and my thesis on infrastructure has always uh been the pretty much the same across the years I've been doing this. It's like Google and Microsoft, their IPs are always going to be better than any SMTP or really any other provider in the space because they pretty much own the entire network of emails, right? And so you want a majority of your sending to come from Google or Microsoft, preferably both, because sometimes Google does better than Microsoft. The other thing to keep in mind is you still do want to have some type of SMTP on the back end because, like, and maybe that's me speaking as an agency owner because there are going to be times when, like, all your accounts get nuked by Google and Microsoft. That's happened to us before. And you never want to, like, the SMTP may not deliver better, but I would take a 0.8% reply rate versus a 0% reply rate when your accounts are nuked. And so the way I think about it is like, you want to have like probably 40% of your infrastructure in Google, the other 40% in Microsoft, and then about 20% of your infrastructure with an SMTP. And then whenever you're starting to scale past, like, I would say 40 to 50,000 emails a month is whenever you want to invest in some of these like premium infrastructures. Like the one we use is Hypertide. There's other guys out there that do it, like Scaled Mail, and I see a couple other people pop up, Superwave. Um, the thing that's really good about these guys is their entire ball game is infrastructure. And so they will be able to get you accounts quicker than anybody else. They'll be able to help you solve things like whenever your tenants run into threshold errors, like like you could, get your orders delivered in roughly 4 hours. And so whenever you're needing to scale up a ton of volume, like you constantly just need more inboxes and being able to rely on a vendor like that to be able to, one click order and get your Google inboxes and your Microsoft inboxes added to your account is so worth it. And it's worth the investment. And typically they're cheaper than list pricing as well. And so that's why I like using vendors like that to really be able to scale all of our clients' outreach and volume.
Nice. Sweet. Yeah. Okay. So basically start off with the whatever the products offer natively. And then once you hit that sort of, I think you said 30 to 50K a month volume, that's when you start looking for these other
Yeah.
providers. Do you have some sort of, because I know like from your coaching, you're a systems guy. I mean, you have to in an agency when I don't know how many clients you have. I think you have well over 100. Do
We're at
you
200 right
have
now.
200? Yeah, that's insane. Do you have some like sort of redundancy or fail safe built in? Like, are you monitoring inbox
Yeah.
health and swapping inboxes out and stuff like that?
Yeah. Yeah. And like, here's the thing too, right? Like when you start to send a ton of volume and you validated that this is a great channel for you, that's whenever you want to start building like a lot of the crazy systems and automations and stuff that we have. So like I can kind of walk you through some of the things that we do. So let's just stick on infra and not even talk about like all the campaign related items that we'll do, but on just the infra side, right? So like I mentioned, we always diversify. So we always buy, or we put about 40% of our sender allocation in Microsoft, 40% in Google, and then about 20% in SMTP. For SMTP, we're using MailReef. They're pretty solid. I mean, I do definitely want to test that different things in the market, but pretty good to go with for right now. And then what you want to do is always buy two sets, right? So let's say, you have enough inboxes to send 100 emails per month, just making up numbers. You want to buy two sets of that. So you have the ability to send 200 emails. And what you want to do is rotate it month on, month off. And that has been a huge help for us because, if you use, in campaign one, the first 100 inboxes, right? The second set of inboxes won't be used until month two, but now they've gone through a 30-day warm up or actually 45-day warm up compared to the 30. And like it just rotates on and off. And then like you're basically putting inboxes back on ice and ice warm up. And then the warm up is just going to naturally kind of heal it in a lot of cases. So that's been one thing that's really helped us. It's kind of hard to do natively inside the platform. You have to run like a pretty heavy automation that can kind of keep track of it all. So I would say that's the first thing. The second thing that we're doing is all your deliverability concerns can be found inside of the bounces, right? And so if you analyze your bounced messages, you can kind of figure out what you need to do to solve your issues. And so, for example, if you get marked as spam a lot, Google will eventually, and marked as spam by a lot of Google users, Google will eventually start to reject every email from your domain. And so that, reply message or that bounce message is always going to say, domain name suspects you as spam, right? And if you get a ton of those in a short amount of period, just consider that domain cooked, kill it, go get another one to, reset it to the setup and then keep running. And then, one thing that we've been doing as well is like inside of Smart Lead, what's really cool is in their global block list, they put every bounce and the reason code in there automatically, right? And so when you're running your campaigns, you can see every single bounce there. And so we actually monitor and grab that data, and then we'll basically align it with each domain. So we can see each domain, what is the bounce rate that it's getting, and then we'll separate the bounces to say, is it a sender bounce or is it a hard bounce or is it a soft bounce? And so then we're able to kind of keep track of those stats to identify like, if the sender bounce starts to increase above 1 to 3%, we know that, hey, like this is pretty much cooked, let's kill it. And then there's just like different things you got to do as well. So like, for example, you analyze your lead list, you basically want to score your lead list to your best accounts at the top and then your worst accounts at the bottom, so you have a higher chance of getting initial engagement. So that's one thing that we've done that's really helped improve reply rates. The other side to that as well is like, you can analyze the MX records of everybody on your lead list and see if they're using Barracuda, Proofpoint, Mimecast, any of these email deliverability softwares. And you can, I don't always recommend to just remove them because sometimes like, you're hitting an ICP that like if you hit software companies in general, like large ones, they all have Barracuda, Mimecast, and Proofpoint set up across their infrastructure. So it's like, yeah, you could just remove them. But what I recommend is just put them at the bottom of your lead list, because that means that, because like the number one thing that they look at is domain age. And so, by the end of your campaign, your domain will have a little bit more age than it did obviously at the beginning of the lead list. And so then you have a better chance of delivering, not confirmed for sure. But that's kind of how I think about that as well. Either remove them from your lead list or put them at the bottom. So you have a better chance at inboxing. And yeah, the rest of the stuff I would say is like the basic stuff that a lot of people miss out on. Like, here's the thing. If you send spam, you're going to get marked as spam. So if you have emails that are coming out saying Leapbird LLC or Ramp LLC or, Capchase Incorporated, people are going to know that this is a cold email and it's automated and they're going to mark you as spam. So like clean the emails, make them short, make them direct. Copy fatigue is a big thing nowadays. So people, they want to, put a whole entire poem in their emails and explain everything. And it's just like, dude, the copy gets fatigued way quicker whenever it's above 120 words. So like we ideally want the word count to be below 100. And, note open tracking, send to only valid emails, run your catch-alls in a separate campaign. There's just like a ton of different things that you have to kind of think about. But truthfully, unless you want to really ramp up to what Ramp is doing. Funny enough, ramped up to Ramp. You don't really need all these systems, and I would hire an agency because it'll probably save you a lot of lifetime, or just a lot of time, because it's not like mission critical to your business to be able to run this like cold email thing as well as like a lead gen agency can, in my opinion. And if you haven't validated the channel as like, something that's going to get you as big as Ramp, it's not going to make sense to build like the amount of automations we have. And like, I just rambled for a good amount on some of the amount of automations we have. There's probably a good like, an extra 10 to 15 things that I could talk about there, on the stuff that we do to kind of perfect our deliverability and perfect our results there.
Yeah, that's crazy. Do you have, it's a bit cheeky of me, but do you have like a resource or like an SOP you have to go like that has this stuff within it?
Uh,
Um,
yeah, kind of. I do. I mean, like we don't really show too much of like how to build a lot of the things,
mm,
because it just depends on your setup and how you configure everything. But
mm,
yeah, our LinkedIn, our YouTube, like I talk about all the strategies that we implement,
yeah.
and I have for like the last 4 years, just because it's like good content to put out there. But yeah, like for the most part, all of our content that shows like a lot of the unique strategies. We do simplify it a little bit just because it's easier to digest. But yeah, all of our content's out there for sure.
That's crazy. Yeah. Well, there you have it. Let's wrap it there because we're over time there, and you've got 200 clients to manage, so I'm sure you're busy. But
200
that was you.
bosses.
That